Morning, Year 10s. Today we're going to reflect on our Macbeth essays, where I asked you to consider the theme of guilt, and your starting point was Lady Macbeth's sleepwalking scene in Act 5, Scene 1. And I'd just like to give you some general feedback to start with. First of all, a selection of things that went well. You guys are really good at choosing quotations as evidence. Really nice juicy ones that can be analysed. I was thoroughly impressed with your reference to the text as a whole. I know I asked you to focus on this, and every single one of you did a brilliant job of using the extract as a starting point and then making relevant and close connections to other areas of the play. Fantastic, well done. Some of you forgot about context, but those of you who referenced it did so very well. Just a little reminder that there are 4 extra marks attached to this question for SPAG. So in an exam situation, your mark would be out of 34. So please make sure that you're checking your spelling and grammar. A couple of things, or 3 things that I noticed. First of all, the use of the comma splice. Don't use a comma where you should have a full stop or a semicolon. So your full stop will indicate the end of a sentence and you're moving on either to explain it in more detail or develop an idea or present a new idea. If you would like to join the concepts together, use a semicolon instead of a comma. Please learn your key spellings. So we need to know how to spell Shakespeare. Hallucination was quite a lovely word that you guys were using, but was often spelt incorrectly, so I've added it here. And please, 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 capital letters for characters' names. They're an easy 4 marks to get to add on if you just read through your work and check those literacy errors. In general, we all need to focus our attention on analysing the effectiveness of the language structure and form. And you will see on your scripts that I've asked you, I've given you particular targets and questions to answer. Really focus on the effectiveness of your quotations. How do they work? What does the quotation suggest? Some of your suggestions are absolutely brilliant, but they're few and far between. And then consider, why Shakespeare used it. What is he really trying to suggest about guilt through the language that he's chosen to use? I have got a little example for you. Now, the essay that I'm going to share with you had a different extract for students to focus on. It was Act 2, Scene 2, when Macbeth comes back from killing King Duncan and talks about his experience. And the reason I've chosen to include it is because most of you referenced it in your speech. You spoke about Lady Macbeth sleepwalking and the fact that she was expressing her guilt. She was basically telling the world in her sleepwalking state about the terrible crimes that had been committed and that she was complicit in. And many of you linked her sleepwalking scene to this quotation where Macbeth heard a voice crying out, "Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more." And so the essay that I'm going to share with you now was focused really around this idea of sleep, and I thought it would be useful for you to see a good example. Macbeth's character is guilty of committing murder, and his punishment for this will begin immediately. Macbeth hears a voice, perhaps another hallucination, that seems to be shouting out to all the house, and explicitly states Macbeth's crime. Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more. Macbeth has literally murdered Duncan while he was sleeping, and at his most vulnerable. Metaphorically, Glamis hath murdered or destroyed his own ability to sleep. and benefit from the restorative and nurturing effects of a good night's rest. Shakespeare emphasizes Macbeth's punishment, repeating the phrase, "shall sleep no more," and it seems appropriate that his punishment will fit the crime. There is a sense of justice. Here is another example of some really nice language analysis of the quotation from another student. Macbeth reveals his guilty conscience immediately after the murder when he hears a voice, possibly another hallucination, loudly and repeatedly stating his crime. Macbeth does murder sleep. The metaphor intensifies the relationship between cause and effect. Macbeth has literally murdered Duncan in his sleep, and metaphorically destroyed the abstract concept of all sleep, consequently depriving the earth and especially the guilty parties of the essential, life-giving benefits of sleep. Moreover, the insistency of the voice still, crying out repeatedly, implies that Macbeth will never escape the consequences of his treachery. Sleep is essential to life, and Macbeth shall sleep no more. The modal verb shall, modifying sleep and further intensifying the certainty that Macbeth will never escape from his punishment. He is guilty, he cannot escape the consequences of this, and he cannot be redeemed. This paragraph is a really nice way of gaining AO3 marks by creating really clear links to the quotation and the concept that's being explored. In committing regicide, Macbeth has disrupted the natural order of being. He has defied God by usurping the throne, which is not rightfully his, and the earth will descend into chaos. A good night's sleep epitomizes good health, as well as exemplifying innocence in the innocent sleep, great nature's second course in life's feast. Macbeth is no longer innocent, and so nature will be complicit in his punishment, using the lack of sleep as a form of torture until the great chain of being is re-established. I hope, having had a look at some other good examples, you'll be inspired to go in and polish your work in as much detail for me. I'd like you to go now to your essays that I've returned to you and have a look at my comments and respond to them. Please remember, any changes need to be highlighted in green on your text so that I can see clearly where you've added information or where you've developed an idea. Overall, guys, I am so impressed with the effort that's gone into your work. You guys are being amazing, and I was really impressed overall with the essays that you produced for me. You are superstars.